Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from OurSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Thursday, November 21st, and we are going to talk about the college football playoff rankings that came out on Tuesday. We're going to preview the Notre Dame game against undefeated Army on Saturday in New York City. And then we're going to talk about questions and comments, talk about Notre Dame's offense, receivers improving, and what Notre Dame needs to do to continue to grow as a football team. So that's going to be our show today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you hear today, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell soon, whatever it is. We are going to go live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. I think Steven Shulkowski has a very good question for Ge Wang. If Notre Dame scores 101, does ESQ pay us to buy their clothes? Because the new Black Friday special is out for ESQ clothing. If however many points Notre Dame scores, Ge Wang is going to match that percentage off for the next week, going into starting on Sunday, going off for the next week into Thanksgiving. It's a good question, Jamie. If they score 101 points, is Ge Wang paying us to buy his clothes? It's a question that I think needs to be asked. So we're gonna have to get to the bottom of that. It's a great deal, though. However much the discount is going to be, it's a great deal on ESQ clothing. Go to esqclothing.com. Shirts, bomber jackets, tuxedos, suits, whatever you may need. He is going to give that percentage off. So it's not eligible for gift cards. So don't go in there with a gift card and think you're going to get the promotion. So it's really good stuff. Head over to ESQ Clothing. Again, it starts Sunday after the game, goes on for the next week. I think a fair question truly is Ge going to root against Notre Dame at some point? Like if they get to 35 points, is he going to start to be like, hey, let's settle it down. Let's slow things down. This is my livelihood at stake, Jamie. Do you think Ge is going to be is rooting against Notre Dame at some point?
No way. He's rooting for Notre Dame all the way. And I think he's rooting for a blowout. I think he really is. But in saying that, I want to say we know Ge. He's a smart guy. He picked the right game to do it where there's going to be limited possessions. It's going to be not, North Texas had 6 possessions the entire game against, Army last week.
Yes.
Notre Dame had more than that in the first half against Virginia. So it's going to be a different game. So it's not a game that even if Notre Dame scores every single time, there's a chance that they might not get to 40. You know what I mean? Like that's how the game could go.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, just the possession number is the thing that's. Look, maybe Ge had something, he knows, right? Ge's a smart guy. He kind of figures, okay, possessions are down.
He looked at the analytics. He did.
Yeah, he probably has a spreadsheet somewhere. Here's a good question from Rob Wozniak about Notre Dame. Do defenses play more man or zone versus Notre Dame? To be honest, I haven't looked at this in terms of what they normally do, right? I know that who was playing a ton of man. I know Purdue played a ton of man. They played a ton of man against Notre Dame. They should have kept playing zone when they did. But do you have a read on this, Jamie, as in terms of our teams playing a little bit more zone or man versus Notre Dame vis-a-vis the kind of what they do the rest of the season?
I don't have the exact numbers or what it is per week. In general, just based on what I've watched from teams and when they've played Notre Dame, and also based on what Notre Dame does with quarterback run stuff. A lot of teams play zone against Notre Dame because when, for those that kind of don't know, when you play man, obviously your back is turned to the quarterback, because you're chasing the man. And if you're playing zone and you're keeping stuff in front of you, if a quarterback runs, you can come up. If you are, playing man, he breaks free on a scramble. That's how you can get a 40-yard scramble because everybody's got their back turned, and then they're reacting and trying to make a play after that. So, in general, I think teams play more zone against Notre Dame. But I mean, you do see a lot of like when they play man, they have a spy
Mm.
on Leonard. Although I don't think the spies have done pretty good of a job when they've had to spy Riley Leonard this year.
Yeah, he's difficult, right? Because he makes the spy miss, Because I was looking at the rushing stats for the two teams this morning, and so Bryson Daily, he's got 181 attempts for 1,063 yards. So he's been a workhorse for them, right? Like he's averaging 5.9 yards per carry, 21 touchdowns. He's got 31 missed tackles forced in his 181 attempps. Riley Leonard has 99 attempts and has 32 missed tackles forced, right? Riley Leonard is very slippery. He's hard to get a hold of. So I think spying him is almost like what more you want to do, in my opinion, is you can't just pin your ears back and rush him. You have to keep him contained within the pocket, more so than actually spying, in my opinion. I think that's more effective, right? Because you can get his head down, and if you can get his head down there and contain him in the pocket, and he gets kind of confused back there, and his feet, sometimes he doesn't make the best decisions when he's doing that. But you don't want him escaping out, because if he gets out, I mean, look, this is what the team that played the most man against them was Purdue, and he cooked Purdue, right? So Navy was doing some man coverage stuff, and he cooked Navy on some of their on some of the scrambles against them. So you don't want to do that too much. Nick Dean, thank you for the super chat. Says our D holds down Army and we win by 7+. He later says that he meant 17+ on that. So he's predicting a cover, at least at this point. Jamie, let's talk about the college football playoff real quick. Actually, no. I did want to get to something. This is my fault. Marcus Freeman is talking to the media right now about Army and prep, and he mentioned that Tyler Buckner is playing the part of Bryson Daily this week. And like, this is a situation where this is a very good like for like comp, in that they're similar players. They're not Tyler Buckner isn't as big as Bryson Daily, but they're also not going to be thumping. He's pretty close though. And like, this is a very good, like, it's not very often you can get a true scout on someone in practice. Tyler Buckner is going to present a very, very good test for the defense in practice to give them a good look and get them prepped. I mean, talk about value, right? And what you're bringing into the program. I think when he came in, it was just kind of like people saw it as, I don't want to say it. I don't want to say the word joke, because it wasn't a joke. It was just kind of like oh, that's kind of fun, right? Like, oh, that's fun. He's back with the football program. That's good. This is real value you're getting out of a very good athlete. He's obviously playing lacrosse for Notre Dame as well. This is really helping the football team. Like, there is a tangible value to having him play the Army quarterback. He played the Navy quarterback in the prep for that as well. So Notre Dame got a good look out of Tyler Buckner. He's really helping the football program.
Yeah, no, I think it's the perfect way to use him, right? Like, that's exactly what if you're going to have him be part of the team, this is kind of the ideal role for him to do that, especially like considering, like, I mean, they're very close, like physically, and like I would say, like, speed wise. I mean, I would say maybe Buckner's got a little bit more juice than Daly, but like, they are pretty similar in a lot of ways, and I actually think Buckner, if he was playing at an Army or something like that, could have been a heck of could have been a heck of an option quarterback, right? So I think it's great. I think that should help him. I'm going to guess that he was probably live all week, so that probably helped, because that's a big thing, because I think with the speed, they won't be able to. You're never able to replicate what they do up front in terms of how quick they're off the ball and how hard their receivers and tight ends get after it. Because that is something I think that is very hard to duplicate in practice. Because even if your scout team guys are really like on point, it's just really hard when you're not like executing, when it's just like, your P's and Q's so well that you are just getting off the ball so quick.
Yeah.
And that takes maybe like, a drive or two to get used to for a defense to prepare for. But especially when you're going against a guy like Daily, who isn't like Blake Horvath is a great athlete, faster, more dynamic than Daly, but Daly will like run through your face mask.
Yeah.
And you need someone who's doing that kind of thing against you in practice. And you need to be able to simulate that as closely as possible. So I think that's really, really big.
And like, if anyone has ever been scout team, running back or quarterback or whatever it is, and you're live against the first team, I mean, Tyler Buckner,
job.
That's a good teammate right there. That's like really going above and beyond. Like it truly is. Again, if you've ever been through that, it's hard, right? It's very difficult. So kudos to Tyler Buckner for doing that, helping Notre Dame prepare for the undefeated Army team. All right, let's look at the college football playoff rankings. These are the top 25 here. Not many surprises, Jamie. Anything that stood out to you? Notre Dame rises to 6. Okay, so they went from 8 to 6. They're the 8th seed because of the automatic bids and things of that nature, which would put them head-to-head against Alabama, right? So Notre Dame's the 8, Alabama is the 9 after these rankings go on and the automatic bids and things of that nature. Any surprises for you? Any big – I mean, I don't want to talk about Penn State again. We've already been over it. Nothing has changed since our last comments about Penn State, but anything surprise you about Notre Dame or about the rankings? And the other question I had is, what do you think happens if Indiana, let's say they just lose standard, right? I don't know, 34-24, right? Or 34-20, something like that. What happens? Do you think happens to Indiana there? How much do you think they'll get punished by the committee?
I think they're going to get punished quite a bit just because they don't have like the. This is kind of their one, I was going to say their one shot, their one opportunity, right? Like it's very much like mom's spaghetti. You got to get it done. You got to get it done in this game because they just don't have the schedule, right? So, I mean, I do think they deserve more credit, and they're getting the credit from the committee for like they've kicked butt in pretty much every game all year, except for the second half of the Michigan game. So, but, that can be a blip right now. But if you lose that game, and those are like the 2 best teams you play, because really it will be, you might find yourself 13 next week, right? Like that's just kind of how it is, right? Like, because really, if you look at it, how much better is the resume than Boise State's? Like not much, right? So I think it's different if it's like, okay, say they're down by 3 and they're driving to like maybe go up or tie the game, either score the game, all of a sudden, pick 6 by Ohio State, they go up by 10, win the game. I think, that's viewed differently. It's all like the context of how it happens, because I think if they show they can hang, it's like the same thing with and I wrote about it in 6 Thoughts today, is that like Ohio State didn't get banged for losing like a game that could have went either way with Oregon on the road, right?
Yeah. Like that was a back and forth game.
Totally. And they shouldn't get, because that's like easily one of those games. Like Oregon gets a credit for winning that game, but Ohio State shouldn't get like downgraded.
Because like someone has to win, like
someone has to win.
It's not a negative against one. If it's 28, 29, 28, right? Ohio State's driving without the offensive PI, they probably just kick a field goal and win the game. So like it's a decision by a referee in a moment that goes from one team has a win and one team has a loss, right? And so, like, to your point, like sometimes the game is close enough and it's back and forth enough to where it's like, look, we're not going to downgrade anyone seriously. One spot difference because one team won and one team lost. But to your point, like it was not any negative against either team in that one.
Yeah, and I think so. And the thing with Georgia is that they got whooped by Ole Miss. If they had lost that game by, the skin of their teeth, they probably wouldn't have gotten bumped out of the out of the rankings, right? I mean, and really too, it was a dumb thing to even argue about because it was so obvious that if they beat Tennessee the next week, they were going to move up.
Right.
So that's just, the way it is. But like Georgia hasn't played like Georgia.
Yeah, you had some really good stats today about that, about Kirby Smart and like was it points per drive? I think you said it was. They've been not the same team. And I think that's part of the thing with them is they haven't looked very good at all. Like they looked awful against Ole Miss, just straight up. They looked awful offensively against Kentucky, Jamie. Yeah. And their defense didn't look very good against Kentucky either. If Kentucky could do anything other than run the ball, Kentucky wins that game. That was a very poor performance again by them. They looked bad at the start of the Alabama game. I mean, Georgia has looked at times like a not very good football team this year.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that's different from previous seasons, right? So look, the numbers you came up with were really good. And 6 thoughts on a Thursday's out, and that's out. Go to irsportsdaily.com and check that out too, because it's really good stuff on Georgia.
Yeah. So Georgia, if you look at their national championship teams, they're first in points per drive both years. And last year, which was why they had a legitimate beef that they should have been in the playoff, right? And I understand it just kind of how it worked out that they didn't get in, because it's like it's tough when there's only 4 teams, right? But they played dominant enough. They were third in points per drive again, and their points per drive in from 2021 to 2023, so 2.7, which is first in the country. Net points per drive, which means basically per drive they're scoring 2.7 points more than they're giving up. That's how much that's the difference in net that they're getting compared to how much they're giving up, which is pretty darn good. And 2.7, 2.43, and 2.4. They're 23rd this year. 0.82. Like they're not playing good. They're not whooping teams. Like they played in the SEC those 3 other years. Heck, in 2021, they played Alabama twice. So they played Alabama twice. They had a super tough schedule in 2021. They've had to play good teams to do that. They were just better. They were just really, really good. And it was obvious they were like the best team. Like it was, or it was them or Alabama, the 2021 year, but they were just on that level. They've really been on that level for 3 years. And I mean, I know you can say transfer portal, they maybe lost some guys, whatever. Look at how they freaking recruited. They got like 85% blue chips and 5-star after 5-star.
Yeah.
They should be whooping these teams. Or at the very least, shouldn't get whooped by Ole Miss, or shouldn't give up 30 to Alabama before they have to wake up and come back, right? So, or not play Kentucky tight or whatever. They just been Jekyll and Hyde all year. And I'm sorry, you got to play well. If Kirby's talking about how, hey, come down here and look at this Ole Miss D-line, I think they're aware of how good Ole Miss's defense is. They don't need to show up in person to be like, wow, that's a good thing. I mean, look where they ranked Ole Miss, and they have 2 losses that aren't great, right? So it's not about it's not about that. Hey, Ole Miss beat them and you got to root for it. It's just like you're not playing good enough. Because guess what? Like you could have been where Alabama's at. I mean, you could be where Texas is at. And I mean, Texas has had the luck of like not playing. It worked out that their schedule isn't as tough, but and they lost to Georgia. Okay, fine, right? But they've won all the rest of their games, and they've done it in. If you look at where their net points per drive, they're top 3. They've done enough. They've played. They don't have like close games. That scare against Vandy on the road was like their next closest game to when they lost, right? They pretty much like controlled every other game. And guess what? If they lose to Texas A&M, they'll get banged, and guess what? They're going to drop below Georgia.
Right.
That's how it works. That's how it works. So maybe shut up, Kirby. And because I know that, people said, oh, this is like a Nick Saban thing to do. It's like, yeah, no, Nick Saban, he'd fight for his team and all that. But he'd also be chewing his team out when they're up 40 because they weren't like, the guy missed a kick out block, right?
Yeah.
He demanded more and his teams played better. So maybe play more like the teams you just had. Maybe don't recruit as many guys who are getting like 140 mile per hour speeding tickets and just like do better with your program, man, and stop complaining.
Yeah, like no one no one told you guys to do college football like this. No one told you to realign. No one told you to bring in Texas and Oklahoma. No one told you to do that. That was your choice. So you gotta lay in your bed. I'm sorry. Like you made your bed, you gotta lay in it. Like you have to take the lumps too. And the thing is like with Notre Dame, right? Like Notre Dame, you have to take your medicine. Notre Dame's medicine is like they can never get a bye, right? That's their thing, and they own it, right? That is Notre Dame's cross to bear. They can't get a bye because they're not in a conference and they're not playing a conference title game. So that's what it is. You don't complain about it after. That was what you decided, right? The SEC decided that they were going to add all these teams and you're going to have a super conference or whatever. So then, like, if you start accumulating losses, then you need to deal with that. Like, that's just the deal. Like, pay the price, like that. I don't want to hear it. No one forced the SEC to do it like this. Nobody did. Right. Same thing with the Big Ten. I don't know what to say. And the thing is, like, I'm coming around on Indiana a little bit because, I'm listening to like Russillo, who I don't like him just generally. I don't like his takes. I don't know him personally, but like, I don't like his takes and I don't like his general vibe.
This would be great if you were like, you did know him personally. I've seen him around.
And he's
at Huntington Beach or wherever he lives.
he's probably hanging out in like Malibu and stuff.
Yeah.
Like he's one of these West Side.
He does seem like one of those guys. Yeah.
He's a Malibu West Side guy for sure, or like Hermosa. Like, let me tell you, okay, I don't want to get into too much like Southern California vibes, but he's like the Manhattan Beach Hermosa guy, right? Who is just like hoity-toity. Celebrities all over the place. Get out of here. Come to Long Beach and have some culture and grow some hair in your chest. No. But he's talking about, I'm going to be biased in favor of Texas, who was in the college football playoff last year. Well, Indiana had on the schedule the 2 participants in the national title game last year. It's not their fault that Michigan took a dump. It's not their fault that Washington took a dump, right? And they have Ohio State. Like, he's sitting there, they're not going to play 7 of the top 8 teams in the conference. It's like, yeah, but they had on the schedule Washington and Michigan. Yeah. The national champions last year. It's not their fault. Like, to me, it's not like they didn't have the opportunity to have a tough schedule. It just didn't work out because those teams fell off, right? So I don't want to bang Indiana for that. And I just think with the SEC, I'm sorry, take your medicine. That's just the situation. It is what it is. I think another thing that is lurking here is, and we see this in the NFL playoffs all the time, Jamie. And we've seen it a little bit when Ohio State's played Michigan the last couple of years, when you get these teams that are built on passing that are built on speed and finesse who got to play up north in December when it's cold. And it's like, Kirby Smart talking about come down to our conference. Why don't you come up to the Midwest and play in the cold when it isn't 50 degrees in Athens and your wide receivers are complaining about the heat seats or whatever. We need more heaters because we're cold in Athens. It's like mid 50s. Come up north then. Like, come up to where the football is played, where it's cold, and you got to bang on each other. And you're not playing in some hoity-toity dome. You're not playing in the Rose Bowl. You're not playing in Mercedes-Benz. You're not playing there. You got to play outside, right? You got to play again, like the Long Beach version, like play where the men play with hair on your chest, right? Come play up north and see how it goes, right? Instead of your little safe bubble in indoors and in your domes, right? Where is the SEC title game played, Jamie?
It's in the dome. It's in Mercedes.
It's in the dome. Yeah. It's inside, right? All the national title games. Where do you play? In Arizona, where it's not cold, where they're in a bubble. The Rose Bowl bubble, right? Go play up north and prove yourself there. That's kind of how I see it. This is where Notre Dame is, I think, in a position to, if they can get a home game against Alabama, come up and play in the 40s and see how it works. USC doesn't like it when it's in October, and they never play in November, and they don't play in December, certainly. That's something that I'm monitoring. What are your thoughts on that, Jamie?
Yeah, no, I mean, it is a real thing. Like, why do you think Tampa Bay sucked for like 40 years? Like every game, I think they hadn't won a game when it was under 40 degrees for, like most of their existence until they basically had their Super Bowl team. Like,
look at the Colts.
Yeah.
Could never beat the Patriots.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, it is different. And it is something that adds to the game, just like how everybody talked about how, well, Notre Dame's got to go play in the heat in Texas, and that is different, and that does make it harder. And those other teams, if you're there longer, yeah, you're used to it. Or like, I mean, BYU, unfortunately, like, they might have hurt themselves quite a bit of, getting a chance of getting a top 4 seed. But if they do get a top 4 seed, I mean, you go to Provo, elevation, that's going to be a thing. That how many of these other teams have ever dealt with it? Or how many of these teams, like, where was that thing on Discord, Greg, where it was like talking about how like Kentucky hadn't played a game? This is the furthest.
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
It's the furthest they played West in like 100 years or something.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah,
like, I mean, why do you think these Big Ten teams are struggling so much? It's because it's like they've never had to do this, like, travel, and they've never had to do all this other stuff. And it's like, I mean, the one thing you can say about Notre Dame, and obviously it's harder to win on the road. It just, for everyone, it's like people don't take it into account enough. If you look at most of these teams in the SEC have lost on the road. Like,
in the SEC, there's 2 teams that have won road games against other ranked teams. One of them is Georgia against Texas. The other is Ole Miss against South Carolina. Yeah. So Notre Dame going to Texas and winning, or Texas A&M, excuse me, and winning, that's a big deal. Like, it doesn't happen in the conference. If you're playing at home, you are decidedly more likely to win. So Notre Dame going to Texas, like you said, playing in the heat. Everyone talked about the heat, and it's loud, and they're going to kill Anthony Knapp, right? And what happened? Again, fourth quarter, Notre Dame dominated Texas A&M in that fourth quarter and went out and won the game going away. Like that, yeah. That matters. Please continue.
Yeah, no, it's just, so I think that is something that with the SEC, like, if it does get out of the SEC and it goes into like the super conference territory where it becomes NFL-ish, where all of a sudden Ole Miss has got to go play Washington or something, like, I don't know, like, they'll probably lose just because like, it's just like they haven't had to deal with that before. And the one thing Notre Dame has had to deal with it a lot. and it is hard. I mean, look how hard it's every time they have to travel to SC, even when SC is not good, right? So it is hard, but it's just something you got to be able to deal with and adjust for, right? So I think that it's one of those things where you're going to look at however it's going to work out with all these teams, these 2-loss SEC teams. It will work itself out.
Yeah.
It's going to. But the one thing that these SEC teams that are complaining aren't even thinking about is that if Notre Dame loses another game and they're a 2-loss team, they're out. If Penn State lost, if lose to Minnesota, they might be out, right? Yeah. That is something real. I think Ohio State might be the only team that would get the benefit of the doubt of like if they lost to Indiana, that they would maybe stay in. Mm-hmm. But I bet that they're going to go lower than these SEC teams or be in the bottom part of those SEC teams, which if you just look at on paper in terms of talent and all that kind of stuff and just like how they played and who they lost to, if you say Ohio State's only 2 losses were to Oregon and Indiana, who would probably be 1-2 if that was the case in terms of ranking. Why should they get lower than those SEC teams? But they probably will, because they'll just say, well, it's Georgia played here and there, or whatever. It's like, that's just how it's going to go. So, I mean, get out of here, SEC, with your complaints. Like, you're already getting the benefit of the doubt. You got more teams in than anybody. Right. So just and really too, like, A&M, it's if A&M beats Texas, they're in. Like, it's just like all this kind of stuff. You're gonna get plenty of teams in the mix. Play a bit better, and then you can secure a home game.
Handle your business.
Handle your business.
Handle your business. And if you don't want to handle your business and you want to have someone else handle your business, then you could go to VSR Media. Founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy Award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh, VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. Jamie, Notre Dame's got some business to attend to in New York this weekend against undefeated Army on their march towards a playoff berth. We talked about it. If Notre Dame loses again, they are going to be out. So these are all must-win games for Notre Dame. We know about the running game, right? We know that Army, they're controlling the ball. They're second in the nation in, I believe, time of possession, if I have that right, Jamie. And they've got Bryson Daily, 174 attempts, 1,062 yards rushing, 6.1 yards per attempt, 21 touchdowns. Kanye Udo is a running back for them, 128 carries, 856 yards, 6.7 yards per carry, 9 touchdowns this year. Noah Short, slot back, 41 carries, 439 yards, 10.7 yards per carry, Jamie. You've talked a lot about how the Army rushing attack is different than Navy's. Would you say that this is a bigger threat than Navy's running attack was, or is it just different? How would you characterize the two situations?
I mean, I would say it's just different, really, because Navy's, I think you're not going to get as much of those counter option type plays that, like, I mean, those plays that Horvath scored on, where one, he's making a great play and making somebody miss, and then has the speed to just take it, right? So that makes it a little bit different. And then also too, there's just more window dressing. It's not like they don't do they have plenty of motion and things to make stress the defense for Army, but it's different. It's not the same. they don't throw as much in terms of, I mean, they throw significantly less. They run 87.2% of the time, which is higher than anybody else. They play that game that the Ken Niumatalolo, hey, we're going to hold the ball here and just grind it. Like, as Mark Freeman said today, they're happy to get 3 yards each time. And then guess what? If they get 3 yards for the first 3 downs, they're going for it on 4th down, and they're 16 of 19 on 4th down this year, right? So they're happy to kind of grind away and do that kind of thing because they really like, they'll come and hit you in the face, in terms of how they block and get after it. They have a bigger O-line. They have that big, quarterback who, I mean, he carried the ball 36 friggin' times against North Texas. He averages like, close to 25 carries a game. They'll do like more single wing concepts too, where it's like, hey, you don't have to worry about, certain things here. And you have to know when, hey, this is a lead block. There's no dive here, right? So it's funny because Irish Steel 63 says stop the fullback. That's not really their offense. They will run the fullback sometimes, but that's not the big thing. And Kanye Udo is like a good back, and he's a good inside runner. He's not like really like a traditional fullback either, though, right? He's more of just like a regular, tailback that's, within that offense or whatever, right? I mean, you have to stop it all, but it's just one of those things where they're going to do it by like out executing you and just grinding you and just hope that they're just like going to keep doing it and just get positive yards. They're, first in the country in havoc allowed. Like they just don't have many negative plays. And also too, because they don't pass, and they've been better passing the ball this year too, right? Like Daly has been the best he's been. He 12.6 yards per attempt when they do throw. Basically, it is very similar to that old Navy style where it's like when they're throwing, they're looking to hit the bomb.
They're looking to hit the bomb. Just to this point, Casey Reynolds and Noah Short are their 2 leading receivers. Casey Reynolds has 12 catches. Noah Short has 11. They're averaging 27.1 and basically 24 yards per reception. So they're going for it, right? They both have 3 touchdowns apiece. So, but they're only averaging like 1 catch a game, right? But when they do, they're going for it, right? They want to move the ball down the field. So, just like you said, it's the same Navy concept. I have a question for you in terms of would you schematically be different against this Army team than the Navy team defensively? What would you line them up in a little bit different way? Would you be more willing to play like a 4-4? Notre Dame didn't do that against Navy. They had all their DBs out there. Would you be more willing to play a 4-4 against this Army team than you were against Navy because of how dynamic Navy was? They wanted to be a little bit more open. Would you be schematically different? Or do you think Notre Dame will try to be schematically different?
I mean, I think they will be. My guess is that they probably won't play like a traditional 4-4 with like 4 linebackers. If they do that, that would be more like Schuler is going to play there, or like Hurd or something like that. Right? That's how they would kind of do it. But I think you kind of have to, because they play heavier, right? They play heavier. They are heavier, like literally heavier, and they play heavier in terms of like the tight ends. They do a lot more like unbalanced lines, like tackle overlooks that you have to deal with. They run right at you more, right? They run right at you. They're not tricking you as much, right? So I think you have to have that. And I think it's one of these things too, where you can't stay static. You have to, if like you might show a 4-4 look, and then like that might work well for a drive or even for 2 plays. And then you got to like tweak it. You have to you got to stem, you got to like have another look. You have to change up your fronts. You have to do all this kind of stuff, because if you stay static, they just will kill you. And that's always been the case with these types of offenses, especially when the quarterback's really good, because he knows like, where to make the decisions, where they're going to have, like, he knows exactly how they're going to block it and where the opening is supposed to be for him to run through, right? So I don't know. I think it's going to be a tough game for the defense. There's going to be, I know it wasn't really like obviously it wasn't a too frustrating day when they played Navy. Other than they gave up the big plays, but they didn't really have those drives where they kind of just grinded them out. That just wasn't what it was in that game. And they obviously turned the ball over a lot. I mean, I do think that there's probably a good chance that Army is going to, they've only turned the ball over 3 times this year, which is insane. Yeah. But Notre Dame's number one in creating turnovers. They're probably going to get create a turnover or 2 in this game. Probably not 6 like against Navy, but they'll probably get something because that's just what they do. And their kind of like team speed and all that kind of stuff is going to play a factor in it. I also doubt that, while they might give up some stuff in the passing game, the guys who are chasing down and trying to play catch up on some of those deep balls, Christian Gray might get there rather than when some of these other guys not get there. Or, Notre Dame, Xavier Watts, we know he's one of the smartest players on the field. He might see it right away and get to that spot and pick that off, right? There's all that kind of stuff that goes with it. But I do think that, there are going to be some drives where you're like, man, Army had the ball for 11 plays here and they're just grinding it. And it's like first down and then first down. And it's just like that. And you just got to get the stop at some point. Like you just have to, they're on, the plus 30. Well, you have to get that stop then or whatever. Or even it's the plus 10 and you just say, hey, we're going to make you like go for it on 4th down or try to kick this field goal. And I think that's going to be super, super important. And because that's always what Notre Dame has been great at in the last 2 years under Al Golden is like, even when they bend, they have found a way to turn some of those things that you're like, man, that was a frustrating drive to watch. But Notre Dame just won in the end because they had a guy who made a play.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think there's, that's kind of the scenario I think that's most likely going to happen. There's going to be some drives where you're like, oh my gosh, like this is just brutal. But that's how Army wants to play. That's the style they play. And you just got to hope that if you're Notre Dame, you come back and it doesn't matter if you take long or like, you got to just score. And if you score and you put the pressure on them, they face 0 adversity all year, right? The biggest lead they had against them, 3-0, and they came down and scored a touchdown after. Like they haven't had to deal with it. So what do they look like if they're down, 14?
Yeah.
I want to see it.
And they got to match scores. CFB Hertz asks, is it a viable strategy on defense to play with all-out aggression to get negative plays? And if you get burned, at least they aren't able to drain a bunch of time off the clock. So basically, err on the side of like, hey, let's try to get them off the field here. And if we can't, like get them on the ground, like don't let them run into the end zone, but like, a little bit like shorten the field for them a little bit at times where it's like, hey, if you're going to drive on us, then you can do it from the 30. Like you said, any stop for Notre Dame is fine. If Army wants to kick a field goal, great, kick a field goal or whatever. We just need to get you off the field, get the ball back. It's kind of a strategy on like, we just want to get the ball as soon as we can. And if that means shortening the Army drive and letting them get some yards or on some chunk plays, then fine. But get the ball back to our offense so that we can score. We believe we can outscore you. Is there something to that? How do you balance that? Like no coach is going to be like, we're going to allow explosives. But how do you balance, I guess, the desire to get the ball back for your offense, basically, is what I'm asking.
I think it's a great question because that is kind of, you do have to have that balance. It has to be a fine line of it because the other thing is you just don't know if it's going to, if you get down 2 scores and that the possessions are going to be limited, then all the pressure's on you.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, that's the thing where you don't want to be like giving up plays. And that's also why you don't want to like turn the ball over and lose possessions. Right. So
no, but like penalties in this game are very like you can't
oh
have the
my
penalties.
God, they can't have those. They can't have the holding calls that calls a touchdown back. Like those will be killers, right?
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden it's, you go from 2nd and 2 to 2nd and 12. You can't have that. You can't have that in this game. And you just got to be able to, I mean, I'm sure Notre Dame is going to take some chances, with some things to try to create negative plays, and they should, but you can't be too reckless with it because if you get, like I said, if you get down those amount of scores with limited time, what if all of a sudden the next drive is a 10-minute drive? Like it is completely plausible that it could happen that way, where it's just like you're just so close to getting a thing, and then it's like 4th and 3, they go for it, and like everyone's whatever, and it's hard, right? And it's hard, and it's you gotta have different guys to step up. And the thing is about why I don't think there is going to be too many 10-minute drives and all that, though, is because there's just always somebody. It's like, well, sorry, I forgot. Somebody asked about who's going to be the linebacker.
Yeah.
That is the guy, right? So I think the answer is there will be no one. Like it will be by committee, kind of like it's been for most of the year. I mean, maybe Kaiser will have a big game. Maybe Drake Bone, whatever. It could be. But I think what's probably more likely is like, man, KVA just blew up that quarterback and hit him, knocked the ball out. Notre Dame gets the ball, and it's like, you're like, KVA barely noticed him before that play. Like, that's kind of how it's been really for a lot of stuff all year, where all of a sudden you're like, Jaden Osbury's had a quiet game. Boom, TFL. Right? Like, that's just kind of, that's the beauty of it. Or no one picked Jalen Sneed to be like, man, he was the best linebacker against Navy. And it could be the same kind of thing here too, right? Where, like I would say, I expect Xavier Watts to be great in this game and make plays because that's what he does every game. And also he's like kind of perfect against this type of thing. He just reads it so well, takes good angles, he's smart, and he's a good tackler. At the same time, like this could be one of those games where Rod Hurd, think of how big that play was. That can happen. It can totally happen. I don't know how much Jordan Clark is even going to play in this game, but if you told me he played 7 plays and one of those plays was like a game-changing play, it would not be shocking. You know, that's just that. And that really is kind of to transition into it. That's the difference between playing Notre Dame and playing everybody that Army has played this year. North Texas highest ranked F+ team they played, 91st. Yeah. Everybody else below, like 5 of the teams are like 120 or below. Like they played a horrendous schedule, like the easiest schedule possible. They dominated it. They played well, no doubt, right? But they haven't played the teams with the level of talent that Notre Dame has. So it's easy to tackle well when, you're just tackling just guys. Well, what if it's dudes and it's Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price and Riley Leonard, and all of a sudden you can have it totally contained and have a thing 70 yards to the crib. That's how it can be on for them on defense, where they've only given up one play or one rush of 20+ yards this year. Maybe they hold Notre Dame down. I mean, it's possible. But if you told me that, they gave up only one run of 20+ yards in the thing, but it was a 60-yard touchdown by Jadarian Price, that could be the difference in the game. Like that could break open the game, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing on defense, where they have so many guys that can just with speed, and all of a sudden the angle you took is not the same angle that, to block somebody that you would have blocked against UAB, right? So it just changes the whole thing. And I love this. And I just was randomly looking at it too, because obviously Army doesn't have a lot of guys who are going to play at the next level. They have some good players, right? And they actually have like maybe a few guys that have a shot of like maybe get into a camp or whatever and see what happens. But, you know, who they've played this year, they played 9 games, right? Eight FBS teams, 1 Lehigh was the FCS team. 10 total guys who are on the Senior Bowl watch list, right? So Senior Bowl, for people who don't know, I mean, it's the premier college all-star game. It's been even better, you know, as years goes on. They do a tremendous job of you know, scouting it and getting the right guys. Obviously, like I think there was like 5 Notre Dame guys who went last year, and all of them got drafted except for Sam Hartman, right? Like, if you go there, very good chance you're going to get drafted. I think they had 110 guys from the game last year, from the practice week, who got drafted. Like, that's kind of insane to have that many guys. 43% of the draft were Senior Bowl guys. So it's like, it's a very big deal. So 10 guys who were on the watch list. So guys who were like, at least in the view of NFL scouts, potential guys. Notre Dame is 16. Those 9 teams have 10.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference. And that's only draft eligible guys. That doesn't include Jeremiah Love, right? Like Jadarian Price wasn't on the list. You know,
like Christian Gray won't be on it. Leonard Moore won't be on it. None of the linebackers were really
Adon Schuler, KVA, Drake Bowen, all of these guys who have like went and like made big plays in big games. Like Drake Bowen is like, I think he might have, you know, be charged with assault for destroying a guard against Texas A&M. Like, you know, these guys have done these things and been physical and played fast and made plays all year. It's just a different thing where all of a sudden you can be really grinding out and doing everything right, and just one guy just wins because he's just that much more talented than you, where all of a sudden you could have play with perfect technique and all that kind of stuff, and one guy just blows it all up. And that's something that, like, obviously, like, you know, guys like Mills and Cross and these other guys, I'm doubtful Cross is playing, but who knows? We'll see, right? But like even a Heinisch, where it's like Heinisch is probably better than 90% of the D tackles they played all year. It's just true.
And like I'll take Kurt Heinisch in a grind game like this, you know.
Oh
like,
yeah.
They're bigger normal. Like Army's bigger than like, you know, they are normally, but like they're not like A&M big, you know, they're not like 320 big, 330 big, that sort of thing. Yeah, like Tyler Borgman says, it makes me nervous. The number of possessions Notre Dame gets and the way the offense looks atrocious in drives. I talked about like the first 13 drives Notre Dame's had in the last 2 games, 4 touchdowns, 7 3-and-outs, 1 4-and-out, and then a missed field goal drive as well. Like they've struggled early. Like they've gotten touchdowns, but then it's like long droughts, right? They had long drought scoring against Louisville. They had long drought scoring against Georgia Tech, right? Like they have, I mean, this is how they lost the NIU game, right? Like just the longest time between scoring drives. Like this is things that have popped up. I do think I think they're going to be keyed into this game though. Like I do think they view it as a big game. And I just think like Notre Dame does have a level that Army A can't get to, and B hasn't even come close to seeing this year. You know, we talked about Tyler Buckner, like he's simulating Army's quarterback, and he can do a pretty good job of that. Who can simulate Jeremiah Love? Who can simulate Jadarian Price? Who can like even Riley Leonard? Who can simulate that? You'd have to have Bryson Daily running scout team, you know, like, and maybe he is, but even he's a different type of player than Riley Leonard is. Like, it's just, how do you simulate Jordan Faison? Like, there are things that you just, like, everyone, you know, we always talk about the speed of Army and the way they run their option. It's hard to replicate. How do you replicate Notre Dame?
Yeah.
You know, it's just so hard.
I mean, frankly, it's impossible for them to do. And because they haven't played anyone, it's kind of unfair to them, which is why if Army wins this game, man, just bow down to them. Congratulations, because to not have played a power conference team until your 10th game of the season, and then to go in and beat like a top 10 team, you got to give them all the credit. Like, just there is no like, hey, Notre Dame gave it. No, it just to be able to do that, that's going to be, it would be amazing. It would be amazing. I would say one thing though, that I think that as long as Notre Dame, the penalties is just the main thing. If they don't commit those penalties
and turnovers.
And I also think that, so that's going to be the thing. Don't do that. That's going to be important, but there's just some red flaggy stuff about Army's defense where, okay, one, the best quarterback they played this year's North Texas, Chandler Morris, 66th in QBR. Riley Leonard's a top 20 player in QBR. They're 101st in pass rush grade, right? They're not like, it's like Navy, right? Where they don't have a lot of good pass rushers that all of a sudden, you can really like affect it, just like rush for and just totally affect, Riley Leonard. And if there is time there, against his own, that does give time for not just him to make a play, but him to also scan, run, do all that kind of stuff. That's important. They're 85th in havoc rate, right? They don't make a ton of plays. And they've frankly been lucky in terms of like their 14 interceptions, which is obviously good, but they're one of the worst teams in passes defended. Like they don't make a lot of plays on the ball. So it's just like, it's kind of worked out. A lot of times those end up being drops or whatever by DBs. They're given 64.6% completions, which 106 in the country. And this one really like 82nd in pass run defense success rate. Like, so I think that is red flaggy in terms of like, if Notre Dame is getting like 5 yards,
if Notre Dame is running on you, you almost have no chance.
I don't think you have a chance.
No,
I don't think you have a chance. And the other thing is I think Mike Denbrock and, in general, like any kind of offensive coordinator, you're going to call the game differently, knowing that it's like where maybe on some of the times you're going to be like 2nd and 2, we got to take a shot here, right? Let's take a shot here. We're on the plus 40, 2nd and 2, whatever. I think in a lot of the, against this, because possessions are so, and like plays could just be so valuable, you're going to say, how about we just run inside zone and get a first down here?
Yeah.
Which isn't how he called the game against Virginia.
And it's not how he called the game against Florida State either, by the way.
Yeah.
Like there is a difference there. It's like calling the game to win versus calling the game to run things that we want to run. See if we can run it. We should be able to do this. Let's do it. Rather than we're calling this to actually win. And I think part of, it was true against Navy too. Like it's almost it's almost worse for them to be good because Notre Dame's attention is up. And they, their antennas are up and they're clued into this game. Like it's almost better for Army's chances to upset Notre Dame that they're 5-4 rather than like 9-0.
Yeah.
Because it's just like a 5-4 team, you're not really paying attention. 9-0 ranked in New York. Okay, we're paying attention now. Like you have our attention. And I don't know that you can beat Notre Dame when you have their attention with a talent deficit like they have. Predictions. What do you think, Jamie?
Sent mine in already. I predicted Notre Dame 35, Army 14.
Oh. I'm going to change it. It's exactly the same.
Just go for it.
I'm not doing the same thing. I'm not doing it.
Just do it. Hey, I didn't tell you to this beforehand.
36-13 is what I'm
okay. Scoregami. Let's do it.
36-13. I don't know what's going to happen, but that's what it's going to be.
The reason why I just picked it because I just think that they're not. I'm still very wary of the whole field goal kicking situation for Notre Dame.
I don't think Notre Dame's going to try a field goal in this game.
And I don't think that Army is going to try a field goal either.
Yeah, same.
By the way, alert for this too. Army, 2 fake field goals this year. They've kicked 5 field goals. They've run 2 fakes. So
listen, you're not getting over on the Biaggi. He's
so
the mad
their
science
holder,
ready.
Their holder, who's a punter, who's actually a pretty good athlete. He got first downs both times. One, he scored a 23-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
And I can say he was moving. It was a pretty good play. So it was both times to him. I mean, they also ran a fake punt with a linebacker that went for like 30-something yards. You know, I'm going to guarantee that they're going to run some type of special teams fake in this game, or try an onside or something. Like Army
Try to
is going
steal
to
a possession.
Yes, they're going to do that. And I can almost guarantee too that Notre Dame is probably going to do something wild on special teams as well. And as we know, the only thing that prevents it from working is bad officiating, because pretty much that's all. Because every time they've tried something,
they have never failed. Under Biaggi, they have never failed on a fake.
And you have to say too, because I think Marty Biaggi when he came to Notre Dame, it was just coming off. Brian Mason just had what a Cinderella year of just like block punt after block punt. Just everyone was just like, this guy is a genius. Look at this guy. Oh my God. Look at how everything's great. And I'm not saying he did a fantastic job. He obviously did, but it was just one of those things where all of a sudden it was just like, man, that's hard to live up to, because chances are if Brian Mason had stayed, they weren't going to block as many punts like that the next year. Right. Like it just was not going to be that way. And I think Marty Biaggi's done a pretty good job in, like, overall. And I think he's done a fantastic job with the fakes and all of that kind of stuff. And I mean, he's just someone, he's got a mind for it and has been absolutely like brilliant with some of those things. And I think about, like, you don't think about, because it was early in the game, it doesn't come across as something that everybody thinks about, but that fake punt against Duke last year with Jeremiah Love.
Yeah.
They only scored
3 touchdowns. They only scored 3 touchdowns.
Yeah,
Like
the wild Jeremiah Love fake this year was like, I can't even believe they tried it.
Yeah.
But when you keep trying and you keep doing it, go for it again, man.
Yeah, man.
Like, if they don't run it fake this game, they're going to run something against USC.
And the thing is people, by the way, like, people get hung up on whether or not a team knows it's coming, right? Every fake trick play that you run on offense is when the defense knows you're on offense. Like, they're in their defensive formation. Trick plays still work even then, right? Like, just because a team is alerted to the fact that there might be a fake doesn't mean that the fake won't work. It's a defensive play. At the root of the whole thing, it's an offensive play versus a defensive formation. Like, if your fakes are good, the thing is people, this kind of drives me crazy, actually. When people say, like, why'd you do this fake? Now they have it on tape that they're going to practice it. They're not going to do this fake again. That's not how it works. You can't practice against the fake that the team hasn't run yet.
No.
And that's the point, right? Like, oh, this is their best fake. We don't know there is no best fake. There are just fakes that work and fakes that don't work. Like, there are no, this is the best one we have. The one to phase on, that's a good fake, right? The good fakes are the ones that work, right? Like, so, like, but they have a number of them that they can do, right? So it never bothers me when Notre Dame does a fake ever. It never bothers me. And it shouldn't bother anyone. Like, they have a lot. They can do a whole bunch of different types of things.
And I think a lot of people have the idea of, it's just like, hey, we put this in this week, or we've been working on this for weeks. And when they do it, it's because they think it'll work against that team.
Yes.
Right. So they might have been practicing that fake for a while, but the reason they didn't run it in those other games is because they were like, I don't think it's going to work here, or timing or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
But they were like, Virginia does this. I think we can get them. Right. Like that's what happens. Right. Like, I mean, it definitely happens because I used to coach special teams in high school. And I mean, I'm no Marty Biaggi, but like we used to have fakes, everyone. We didn't run a ton of fakes. You're not running I wasn't confident enough in our guys to get it done most of the time. But believe me, in big games where I was like, I saw things, I'm like, yeah, we're doing this. And it worked because it was like of who we ran it against.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's don't worry about the fakes. There are a lot that they can do. All right, that's a good place to end it. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please hit the like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell so wherever it is. We are going to go live. We'll be back after the game on Saturday for the post-game show. And that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to be at the women's basketball game. I'm going to be covering that for Irish Sports Daily. I'm going to be in the Galen Center, Notre Dame women versus USC women. It's going to be a great one. Yeah, it's very exciting for me. So follow along, and I'll have some content on that as well. So have a good rest of your day, everyone. We'll talk to you on the weekend. Keep hitting and hustling.